with Walter Cronkite. And in Washington, George Herman, Marvin Kalb, Bob Schieffer, Don Webster in India, David Dick in Jackson, Mississippi, Bill Curtis in Albuquerque, New Mexico, Bill Plant in Detroit, Michigan, and Murray Fromson in Kansas City, Missouri.
Good evening. The Supreme Court, in a split decision that could be a far-reaching one, ruled today that a city can close its municipal swimming pools rather than follow a court order to integrate them. George Herman reports.
Today's ruling has already been called a major setback for civil rights and for the urban poor. Jackson, Mississippi used to have 5 municipal swimming pools, 1 for blacks and 4 for whites. A court ordered them all integrated, and now there are none. Jackson argued before this court that integrated pools would cause dangerous tensions, decreasing revenues and operation of the pools at a financial loss. Today, the 5-4 majority of the court said in this decision that the Constitution does not compel a city to continue operating pools or any other public facilities against its will once they've been integrated. So blacks in other areas are now put on notice that if they push for integration, they may lose whatever public recreational facilities they now hold. This decision today once again establishes firmly the position of Justice Hugo Black as the swing man on the court. His majority decision was concurred in by 2 longtime members of the conservative wing, Justice Potter Stewart and Justice John Marshall Harlan, and also by President Nixon's 2 appointees, Mr. Justice Blackmun and Chief Justice Warren E. Burger. George Herman, CBS News at the United States Supreme Court.
In the city where the pools were closed, there's a new plan under consideration that would provide integrated swimming. David Dick reports from Jackson, Mississippi.
Locked pool at Battlefield Park has weeds growing in it. Even sugarberry trees have pushed up through the cracks and crevices of the concrete.
The diving boards are gone. The frames that supported them are rusting. The concrete hot, straining under the stress of 8 summers of neglect. The buildings empty except for the persistent weeds. City property, no trespassing, no swimming at the Livingston Park Lake. A sign at the wading pool says, your pool, help keep it clean. What used to be the diving platform protrudes from the center of the chain link fence enclosed lake, and the water level is down. And this, one of the city's 5 closed pools, the College Park pool, was the one for blacks only. Now it's a mixture of weeds and concrete. One young black who happened by said he wished the city would open it again because he and his friends said there have been incidents of blacks drowning this summer in unfamiliar creeks. When the pools were closed, the city argued integration would not make them practical or safe to operate. Now, for the first time, there is a possibility of integrated public pools.
There is a recommendation from the Chamber of Commerce Task Force on Recreation relative to the construction of 10 swimming pools at 10 school locations in this city. I believe this suggestion has merit. We do not have the money for this expenditure at this time. I believe the City Council should consider the situation in our city relative to this recommendation and submit to the voters for a bond referendum this fall the proposition of the construction of these pools.
Alex Waits, Acting Field Secretary of the state NAACP.
You don't consider this a defeat?
Well, it's not a victory, but it's an action that keeps the city from being able to evade. They can't say we got to wait to see what happens in the court. Now they have to answer to the people, and we might even start tomorrow at City Council and keep on at it every week until we get an answer.
What will you do at City Council?
We will bring to the attention of the citizens of Jackson the necessity for providing swimming pools on an integrated basis, and that the city has no excuse for evading the issue now.
NAACP official Waits said blacks will make the opening of public swimming pools in Jackson the issue in every future political campaign. David Dick, CBS News, Jackson, Mississippi.
In a major statement last Friday, President Nixon pledged to enforce the laws against racial discrimination in housing, but said the government would not force communities to accept low-income housing. Following up on that message, the administration announced today that it is filing suit against Black Jack, Missouri, a St. Louis suburb which changed its zoning laws in a way which has prevented the construction of a federally subsidized housing project. The government claims that the reasoning is a subterfuge for racial discrimination. And Attorney General John Mitchell said action will be taken against any community which can be proved to be blocking federally aided housing on racial grounds. There also was word that the Justice Department soon will file 8 other suits, and none of them against cities, charging racial discrimination in the sale or rental of housing.
When all these bottles were full, they could quench a thirst or make a mouth water. But now empty bottles can have a new life. Used bottles are ground up and melted, and used again to make new bottles. So the bottle you drank from last week may be part of the brand new bottle you drink from next week. That's the life cycle of glass. Maybe tomorrow you'll drink to it.
The finest color tuning system you can buy, now at our lowest suggested list price ever. Try this test. We'll deliberately mess up this actual closed-circuit picture to demonstrate Motorola's push-button Instamatic color tuning. One button activates these 5 different controls. Instamatic color tuning. Never before at this $319.95 Motorola suggested list price. Optional with dealers. From the makers of Quasar. By Motorola.
This weekend, portions of a highly classified Pentagon document came to light for all the world to see and brought cries of outrage from Washington. The New York Times began publishing parts of a voluminous report that the Pentagon had drawn up on the causes and conduct of American involvement in Vietnam. So far, its most controversial revelation is that the Johnson administration planned attacks on North Vietnam even before the Gulf of Tonkin incident in 1964. Said the Times, even in the waning days of the presidential campaign later that year, the administration was finalizing plans to attack sites in the North, this despite Mr. Johnson's public statements he did not want to upgrade the war. Senator George McGovern, a leading critic of the war, called the report, and we quote, a story of almost incredible deception. Deception of the Congress and of the American people by the highest officials of the government, including the President of the United States. Bob Schieffer reports from Washington on another aspect of the story.
The controversy came up at the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, where Defense Secretary Laird was testifying. The committee has been trying to get copies of the documents for months, and Laird said the administration refusal to release them still stands.
Now that these documents, ostensibly in the whole, have been published in the press, is the position of this administration that they will not give them to the Foreign Relations Committee on a classified basis?
Well, I'll be glad to examine that, Senator Symington, but I can assure you that it's the position, my position, that the classification of these documents is not changed by their publication.
Well,
because that isn't the way you classify or declassify documents as far as the government is concerned.
Well, I want to get out on the table why you apparently are reticent about giving the information to this committee on a classified basis. Are you saying that the publication of the papers are against the security of the United States?
The publication of the papers violates the security regulations of our government.
Do you know who gave them to the paper?
No, I do not, but there are a very limited number of copies, and it will not be hard to track down.
Laird has asked the Justice Department to investigate how the information got out. A Pentagon spokesman added quickly, "It wasn't us. We know where our copies are." There was no shortage of theories on who did it. Washington likes nothing better than gossip, especially when it is spiced with mystery, intrigue, and all sorts of political possibilities. There was talk of little else here today. One rumor being circulated was that a member of the Nixon administration had leaked the story, hoping to hurt the Democrats in '72. The White House ridiculed that theory and seemed to express little concern about the disclosures. Another theory was that a disgruntled member of the Johnson administration had done the deed. hoping to protect his place in history by making the facts public before Johnson's book is published later this year. But mostly, Washington was fascinated by it all, with Republican Senate Leader Hugh Scott, who seemed to sum up much of the feeling here. Deploring the release of classified information, Scott added, the documents were instructive. Bob Schieffer, CBS News, Washington.
Senator Barry Goldwater, the Republican presidential candidate in '64 who advocated bombing of the North, had some comments of his own on the document, and he talked with Marvin Kalb.
Senator, did you know that there were contingency plans, say, for bombing North Vietnam?
Yes, I knew about them. I knew about them, but not in complete detail.
What kind of detail did you have on them?
I knew that these plans had been in the process of being made for several months. I didn't know what the targets would be, but I knew that there was an alternative. There were two things that could be done. One was to increase the ground strength in the south. The other was to bomb the north. And it was my understanding at that time, which was before the campaign of 1964, that both would be done. I think that had the American people been told by the president, or by the president and me, who was running against him, that the American people would have solidified behind the president, and President Johnson would not have had to quit the office. In all probability, he would have been reelected, and I told him that too. He put it this way, he didn't level with the American people. And this is one thing the American people won't forget.
Senator, do you feel on the basis of the current revelations that it would be fair to describe the '64 campaign as a gross deception of the American people as to exactly what his true plans were for the war?
Oh, yes. I think that's perfectly obvious. I didn't try to bring that out. I didn't think that I should. I was very worried about the things that I knew, because my knowing them and my divulging them would be two different things. They were very, very highly classified, way above secret. And I wouldn't want to have used it. People would have said, "Where'd you learn that?" I think, though, well, first of all, would the American people believe me? That's a hell of a question. I was being painted as the worst kind of blackguard. I was bomb happy, going to nuclearize the world. And I don't think the American people, the average American, would have done anything but say, "That Goldwater sure off his nut."
The monsoon season has begun over much of Indochina, curtailing ground action but not U.S. airstrikes. B-52 bombers and old World War II Laotian planes, taking advantage of a break in the clouds, hammered enemy positions near Ban Nik, killing 300 to 500 communists. It was said to be the biggest Allied victory in southern Laos in recent months. U.S. bombers also pounded a jungle area around Khe Sanh in South Vietnam. Some 10,000 enemy troops are believed massing in this mountainous region for an attack later this year. Total U.S. troop strength in Indochina has dipped below the 250,000 mark. 3,700 servicemen were pulled out of the war area last week. Last month we told you about the look-alike Storer brothers, Glenn and Wesley, who swapped places so Glenn wouldn't have to return to Vietnam for the second half of his tour of duty. Well, the young men were found out, returned to their rightful places, and today the Army said Glenn had been reduced in rank from Specialist 4 to Private and fined $146. And of course, he's still in Vietnam. The Soviet Union has joined forces in the Pakistan relief effort, agreeing with the United States to fly refugees to central India, away from the deplorable, overcrowded conditions in and near Calcutta. Meanwhile, the situation remains grim, and Don Webster reports.
It is slowly dawning on the residents of India that the more than 5 million refugees are not here just temporarily. They have come in, they have settled, they are building homes, and they are intending to stay. And some Indians simply don't like the idea. This town, called Barasat, is an excellent example of the problem. It's located between Calcutta and the Pakistani border, and until recently was a sleepy little town of about 90,000. But in the past few weeks, 200,000 refugees have poured in here. They are everywhere, the schools, mosques, and here at the town's only hospital. They have filled every bed, filled every room, and now even filled the yards outside the hospital. Many suffer from cholera. Others have relatives with the disease. Any resident of Barasat who became ill with anything else can hardly get near the hospital anymore, much less be admitted. The refugees hold occasional political rallies. They recite all their complaints against President Yahya Khan of Pakistan. They tell how the Punjabis there have discriminated against these Bengalis, and they talk about mounting an armed force to liberate East Pakistan. But the refugees have so many problems as it is now, any armed invasion of East Pakistan is probably some time away. One of the big problems is still cholera. At Barasat, one refugee has just died of it. The villagers have covered his body. A baby has died. His parents have simply dumped his body at the side of the road. There will be no funeral, no ceremony. Hindus believe in reincarnation. The life of this child has moved elsewhere. Don Webster, CBS News in East Bengal State in India.
A U.S. Air Force jet with 24 persons on board disappeared last night during a flight from American Samoa to Hawaii. Rescue planes have found debris at one point between the islands, but it's uncertain if the debris is from the missing plane. The Air Force will not disclose the plane's mission, but there is some speculation it may have been monitoring the latest French nuclear test last Saturday.
This is a carburetor. And this is TCP2, a new additive package now in all Shell gasolines. TCP2 can keep a clean carburetor running clean. Most gasolines have an additive that'll do that. But not all of them work to clean up a carburetor that's dirty to start with. TCP2 can do that, which is good for mileage and fewer emissions. New TCP2, now in all Shell gasolines.
Here's a happy couple, and they're moving into their new home. And they got their down payment by saving regularly at their savings and loan. That's how millions of families do it. After all, savings and loan associations finance over half the homes in the country. Saving is a loving thing.
It sure is.
A savings account at a savings and loan makes a lot of things possible.
1,300 National Guardsmen patrolled the streets of Albuquerque, New Mexico today after the wildest night of rioting in that city's history. Bill Curtis picks it up from the beginning.
Albuquerque's Roosevelt Park was filled with young people, 500 to 1,000, who gathered on the warm Sunday afternoon as they had many times before. But when undercover agents in the crowd called in uniformed police to make arrests for public drinking, it turned to violence. The crowd surged around the police and forced them to retreat from the park. Rocks and bottles were thrown. Police fired back with shotguns and pistols, mostly in the air, but one young person was wounded. Several patrol cars were overturned and set ablaze as the disorder spread back and forth across the park amid gunfire. Led by a militant Mexican-American group, about 500 young people marched downtown. But once there, they swarmed through the streets, setting fires, breaking windows, and looting. 36 fires in all, with early losses set at $2 million. There was gunfire at police, newsmen, and firemen. 33 persons were injured, 13 by gunshot wounds. At midnight, city officials asked for help from the National Guard, and 1,300 guardsmen were called up. The city was quiet by early morning. 75 were arraigned in a nearby detention center on charges ranging from public drinking to inciting a riot. But the tensions remained high. Bill Curtis, CBS News, Albuquerque.
As evening came, there also came fresh reports of rioting in Albuquerque. Reporter Curtis says there is looting in the downtown sections of the city, and police are dispersing crowds with tear gas. Police in Detroit are having a rough time with homicides. Today they stood at a record 316 so far this year, or almost 2 a day. 15% of them, the police say, are related to narcotics, including the 7 bodies found this morning in a single apartment room. Bill Plant reports.
Police described the early morning slayings as executions. The 4 women and 3 men were all found in the first-floor living room, seated in chairs. Some were bound with surgical tubing, commonly used by heroin addicts. The victims, all black, in their late teens or early 20s, had been shot through the head. Another man was wounded and was taken to the hospital in critical condition. Police are seeking 4 men who were seen fleeing the house after the shooting. There were 3 survivors who apparently crashed their way to safety through this rear window while the shooting was going on. They turned themselves in. Homicide detectives say they found weapons as well as narcotics at the scene, and though they won't speculate, it appears that the murders fall into a pattern of more than 20 narcotics-related slayings this year. Informed sources believe that there is a gangland-style drug war among black dealers in Detroit. Bill Plant, CBS News, Detroit.
The auxiliary bishop of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Providence, Rhode Island, the Most Reverend Bernard Kelly, resigned today from the priesthood, saying he's frustrated by the conservatism of U.S. bishops. He charged the bishops are more concerned with keeping the church as it has been for centuries than they are with the war in Vietnam. Bishop Kelly, who is 53, has long been an outspoken liberal. In Sydney, Australia, 4 of the 9 babies born yesterday to Mrs. Geraldine Broderick are still alive, but doctors say the condition of 3 of the survivors is causing grave concern. Mrs. Broderick herself is in satisfactory condition.
Ideas that have often looked good on the drawing board have a tendency to perform differently in real life. This message is brought to you by the people at Volkswagen. We've had 23 years to straighten out our bugs.
Norelco introduces the revolutionary Super Micro Groove Shaver. With fantastic micro-thin heads to shave up to 44% closer, up to 50% faster than they ever could before. 18 self-sharpening blades with unique floating heads shave far smoother. The new Norelco Triple Header 3. Up to 44% closer, 50% faster.
The averages fell sharply today on the New York Stock Exchange, with the Dow Jones Industrials down almost 9 points. But volume was on the light side, 11.5 million shares. The average price per share fell 34 cents on the New York Exchange and 13 cents on the American. Observers said investors once again were concerned with the prospect of rising interest rates. But today, 2 banks, one in Philadelphia, the other in Chicago, increased their prime rate from 5.5 to 5.75%. Other banks across the country showed no immediate sign of following suit, but the White House quickly expressed surprise and disappointment, saying there is no current shortage of loan money. However, there was good economic news today. The key industrial production index shot up 0.7% last month. Following smaller increases in March and April, the new jump indicated expanding business confidence in the state of the economy. Bell Telephone got formal news of an impending labor crisis from the Communications Workers of America today at the union convention in Kansas City. Murray Fromson reports.
The nation's largest telephone company was on the receiving end today of a disconnect from Kansas City. Far apart in contract negotiations with the Bell system, the Communications Workers of America took a strike vote that could disrupt telephone service from coast to coast. Everyone suspected the outcome of the vote. Confirmation came from Union President Joseph Byrne.
Now, we don't want a strike. We want an agreement. But the independent auditing firm of Ernst & Ernst have told me that the 287,440 who voted, 205,431 voted yes.
His announcement touched off a 20-minute demonstration on the convention floor. The union represents about 500,000 employees of Bell, from switchboard operators to phone installers, engineers, and clerks. It's asking for a 25% wage increase in the first year of a new contract. The company has countered with an 11% offer, and negotiations have stalled.
On Wednesday, Byrne will announce a strike date. If there is a walkout, he predicts a long one and says the union has a $15 million strike fund to back it up. Murray Fromson, CBS News, Kansas City, Missouri.
The Bell system notes that 95% of its calls are automatic, and it believes supervisory personnel can handle the rest of the traffic, but it concedes a strike would cause delays in installations and repairs. A new armor-plated limousine is being constructed for President Nixon behind closed doors at the Ford plant in Dearborn, Michigan. It is believed that the bulletproof car, being hand-built on a Lincoln Continental frame, will cost about $250,000, but it will be leased to the White House at $5,000 a year, something of a bargain.
Aren't you coming to bed?
Oh, I won't sleep. I keep thinking about that bridge game.
Take Nitol. It's a different formula from other leading tablets.
Different? Is it safe?
Sure, just read the label, follow directions.
Does it work?
Well, Nitol works for me. Makes me drowsy so I can fall asleep. There's nothing like a good night's sleep.
Take Nitol tablets or capsules. Both have the Good Housekeeping seal.
If there's anything Sam likes better than selling fruits and vegetables, it's eating them. Nothing unusual about that, except Sam has dentures. Nothing unusual about that, except Sam puts his denture adhesive on in the morning and it holds tight all day long. And that's unusual. That's Confident, a fantastic plastic cream that holds dentures 8 full hours for many people. Confident can work as long as you do, maybe longer.
The U.S. Navy, an organization whose traditions are usually long-lasting, has decided to make the most drastic change in enlisted men's uniforms in its history. Barry Seraphin reports.
There have been many changes in naval uniforms since the time of John Paul Jones, but throughout much of its history, the Navy has had a tradition of bell-bottom pants and soft hats for the enlisted man. This, though, is the new look. By 1975, everyone from seaman to admiral will wear the same dress uniform, an officer-style cap, a double-breasted jacket replacing the jumper top, and straight-leg trousers. The only distinction will be the insignia on the uniform. The idea is to promote a One Navy concept. For a time, there will be a blend of old and new. The new outfits won't be available for another 2 years. The Navy says 90% of the enlisted men surveyed in a poll prefer the new uniforms. Ironically, the bell-bottoms are being eliminated at a time when they are most fashionable. Barry Seraphin, CBS News, Washington.
And that's the way it is, Monday, June 14th, 1971. This is Walter Cronkite, CBS News. Good night.
This is Buddy the Kidder spinning out with the top 40, the middle 30, and the bottom 20 VU.
We asked Bud Kidder what he thought of the taste of Listerine.
I hate it. This one's for my little pals at Richmond High. Hi. But I use it twice a day. Listerine kills germs that can cause bad breath, and it's strong to last long. It's true, this stuff works. And like I gotta keep my engineer happy, you know. And now kids, late sound, great sound.
Listerine Antiseptic. It's got the taste people hate. Twice a day.
For acid indigestion, when your stomach's doing jumps and bumps, I use Rolaids. Trying to get that order. Boy, you have coffee with the buyers. I've had as many as 4, 5 cups of coffee before lunch. It can give you a burning feeling, but you'll lose it when you take Rolaids. So if somebody else wants a cup of coffee, you can stand it.
Direct from our newsroom in New York, this has been the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite. CBS News concludes its series on justice in America with Crime in the Courts, tomorrow night at 10 Eastern Time on CBS.
The police shootings called for